Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Module 3. You should be really into the swing of things now. And this is a crucial module because we're looking at the policy and legislation context for sustainability. Now, first a warning, this is going to be a tough module, and the reason is that it's content we're not that familiar with, most of us. We're not lawyers, we're not dealing often with legislation, and there's quite a lot of content that perhaps you won't be familiar with. And so do make sure that you set aside enough time. Sometimes this kind of content is not seen as the most exciting, and you may experience that as well. But I have to say that the topic is extremely exciting, especially right now. It's in fact absolutely crucial. What we've discovered through 50 years of an experiment in deregulation, roughly since the 1970s, is that that does not work. From a sustainability point of view, it's been absolutely disastrous. The idea that you simply give over to the market and don't regulate and try to have as small a government as possible might have been good for companies and for multinationals and for CEOs, but for society and the environment in general, it hasn't worked. And the reason we know is quite simple. That is that the market tends to externalize the societal and environmental costs while internalizing the benefits. And people often forget that Adam Smith, with his invisible hand of the market, was actually a moral philosopher. He had another book all about the moral sentiments of the market, which assumed that there was a strong role for government in setting the playing field, the rules of the game, and ensuring that there was free and fair competition and that the necessary rules were upheld. So I think we're now emerging into an age where we start to see the role of strong government coming back. Not only have some of the countries like China showed that strong government can have its benefits for sustainability, that it enables quicker change at more scale, but also we see that this is helping to shape competitive markets with the Industrial Net Zero Industry Act, most recently in Europe, also with the Inflation Reduction Act from the United States. What we see actually is a play for competitive advantage. In fact, for the first time, Europe seems to be on the back foot, seems to feel that it's been leapfrogged by America and all the incentives in the IRA. And this is only two regions of the world. There's a lot going on all around the world, and also at a multilateral level, right? We've had most recently in December the Montreal Kunming Agreement on biodiversity, to try to get, among other things, to 30% protection of land and oceans by 2030, but also a new plastics treaty that's being negotiated internationally. So there really is a lot happening, and it seems to me like the age of good regulation is coming back, and we absolutely need it for sustainability. That's not to say, by the way, that government should be telling business exactly what to do or should be betting on certain solutions, for example, certain technologies, but it should be setting those ambitious targets and then allowing business to innovate. Well, that by way of a little preamble. I'll return in a moment to an interesting case on this, but let's first dive in a little bit to what the tasks are for this week. You are not required this week, this is the good news, to complete a written assignment. Perhaps in recognition of the heavy content, you have a quiz, and it's largely based on the content from the module itself, although you may do a little extra reading. And the way that it works is it's simple. I think it's 9 questions. You can go in, make your selections, and save your answers and come back to them at any point and complete them, change them. It only registers as final when you hit the submit button, and that has to be, of course, before the deadline of 11 p.m. on Tuesday, UK time. So that's your main assignment for this week. As always, we suggest that you take the necessary time, but don't overthink it. We're not trying to catch you out. So, I think that you should do well. This is a chance to pick up some grades, I think. The second thing is the forums. In the large class forum, we're asking you to reflect on a sector that you think you're interested in. It could be the sector of your ongoing class, your ongoing company. Doesn't have to be, but choose a sector and then reflect on what the implications of the Paris Climate Agreement are for that sector. So you may need to do a little bit of research, a little bit of homework, a little bit of checking. You can use this as a chance to expand your own knowledge and to educate each other in the spirit of peer-to-peer learning. We do suggest that you have those threaded discussions. So if you're choosing a new sector that hasn't been covered already, or that your tutors haven't queued up for you, then just make a bold heading of the sector name so that others can respond within that thread with their thoughts. The next forum, the small group forum, graded forum, of course. Here we're asking you to share your experience from your own country. It could be where you live, where you work, where you have experience. What are the areas of policy and legislation that you think are good, that are worth sharing, that are perhaps even best practice? And what are some of the areas where you think there may be gaps that you could learn from others? This is always a fascinating forum because we really do learn from each other and what's happening on the ground in your particular location or country. And we find it quite informative and inspiring. So look forward to seeing what you share on that forum as well. The other thing to know is that we have a live session again this week. It's on Friday, as usual, 10 a.m., repeated at 4 p.m. UK time. We hope you can make it. If you don't, we do record it and we'll share that recording. As always, it'll be a discussion among the tutor group. I'll be leading this one and we will be talking about policy and legislation. Then let me come back and just share that little case I wanted to mention. One of the issues with policy and legislation is that we do get the phenomenon of negative lobbying. So what will happen most often is that a company will have a wonderful sustainability policy, maybe a nice report, and some really good people working in that space, but then another part of the organization, usually the financial or the legal department, will be lobbying against legislation that perhaps would be helpful for sustainability. And unfortunately, this slows down the progress and the changes we need to make. So negative lobbying is something we have to grapple with in this space of sustainability. It's very real. Sometimes it goes as far as even what we might call state capture. Now, an interesting case on this, where we tried to tackle this constructively, is the Corporate Leaders Group on Climate Change. Cambridge, the Institute for Sustainability Leadership, played a role in facilitating a group of businesses from different sectors represented by their CEOs. And the objective was to try to break this deadlock where government was saying they couldn't put forward ambitious legislation on climate change because they expected business to lobby negatively against it. And companies were saying they couldn't be ambitious with their investments to change because they didn't have the clear policy targets and necessary details of what would be expected when. And so we helped to facilitate this group on behalf of then the Prince of Wales, now the King of England, Charles, and it was very successful. What we did was once a year, usually in the lead up to the key climate negotiations, this group would release an open letter to the public, to the media, calling for more ambitious legislation on climate. And we would connect that group of CEOs with the top leadership, with the Prime Minister and his office here in the UK, and really create that political space to be more ambitious. That's been expanded to Europe now. It operates at a European level as well, so it's still going, it's still playing an important role. But it's just an example of how we can constructively engage with policy development. Now, the last thing to say, and then I'm going to end with my creative words, is a little bit about your grading. And I'm sure that you've all now had a chance to receive at least your Module 1 assignments and feedback, and perhaps you're disappointed. That might be the case. Just remember that this is a journey and that we're trying to constructively help you. Just pay attention to the feedback that you get from your assessors. They're trying to guide you and coach you to improve. And remember that we weight this more heavily towards the end of the course. So there's plenty to play for. You can, of course, if you think that your assessor has got it completely wrong, you can appeal, essentially, ask for a tutor to review your grade and the feedback. Just bear in mind that if you do that via the Success Manager, that your grade could go down as well as up. So we would conduct an independent review of that assignment. It's an option, but I would say unless you're really struggling, perhaps think twice about that and just try to take on board the feedback. Keep an eye on those grading rubrics and the advice that we're giving, and you should be fine. You should continue to improve. I think that's all for this week. I think when we talk about legislation and policy, one key factor perhaps that's implicit that we don't talk about so much is political leadership. And we could have a debate about whether we are lacking or whether we have good leadership in this space. I think it's a mixed bag, and often we are lacking. We don't have the bold leadership, the credible, the moral leadership that perhaps we need. And so we need to continue to ask for that, to invest in that, to champion and to celebrate those leaders that really are bringing a new kind of energy and bringing sustainability matters to the fore. So I'd like to finish this week, therefore, with a poem, and the poem is called To Lead. And just bear in mind that there is research you've been doing, you've been reading at least on different characteristics of leadership, and this builds nicely on that. So here's the poem. To lead or not to lead, that is the wrong question, for in our hour of need, it's what to lead that matters more, the core of values and their strength, the door of possibilities, the planted seeds and fruits they bear. It's there true leadership resides, for tides are changing quickly now. It's not the who, it's where and how. Leaders come and leaders go, but which will show a better way, a brighter day, because they led a lighter tread upon the earth, the birth of purpose in our lives and work in which our spirit thrives. Let's not ignore the children's voice. The choice is ours, to lag or lead, to make the world more green and fair, in ways that care, that hope and dare. Don't tell me that you lead, for I will never be impressed. It's how you lead that interests me, and what you strive for without rest. It's where your dreams are taking us, and who will thrive the best. It's why you lead that tells me more than all the feathers in your nest. To lead is nothing special, for to serve's the real test. To lead or not to lead, the question's quite absurd, for leadership's the path that freed the slaves, and we need so much more from shore to shore, where chains remain and oceans rise. Yet leaders' lies support charades and barricades that cling to glories of the past. Rise up new leaders who can shape a future that is built to last. Good luck. We'll see you online.